I think I started my video off with a cough. Hi, everyone. Gordon Causey, sometimes going by the username Gordy Canuck, coming to you on my YouTube channel from little Brighton, Ontario. Small little town, Eastern Ontario. There's the cough again. I'm a smoker. But smoking is essential in this world because it's all about health. Um, the title of this one, I guess I put down, The Narrative is Falling Apart. And that's evident, at least to my eyes, and I think to a lot of people's eyes, that the narrative is falling apart. And that narrative is that this virus is the most pressing existential crisis the world has ever faced, or certainly in our lifetimes, and that everything has to be done in order to combat it. No, nothing is more important than stopping this horrible virus. And so even our Constitution, our Charter of Rights, and even the rule of law, there's talk now of Justin Trudeau potentially, it's just chatter, it's just background noise, but in politics, there's an idea called floating a trial balloon. And so chatter will start, gauge your reaction. So the talk is of the old War Measures Act, which has now been renamed, I believe, as the Emergency Measures Act, which would basically suspend things like habeas corpus, and meaning that people could be rounded up and detained. They wouldn't have to tell you the charge. They wouldn't have to give you access to counsel. They could basically treat you the way that, in a fashion, Omar Khadr was treated when he was a child soldier over in Afghanistan. We abrogated those rights. The Canadian government did not provide Omar Khadr with the rights he is entitled to under our Constitution, under our Charter. And as a result of the abrogation of those rights, our government paid him just over $10 million. And I know this is a controversial topic, but in point of fact, when that happened, I agreed with it, for the simple reason that I believe in the rule of law, I believe in our Constitution, and I believe in our Charter of Rights, both when it's convenient and when it's inconvenient. Most importantly, when it's inconvenient. The law is the law is the law, and a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian. And if you can take away Omar Khadr's rights, then you can take away my rights. What's ironic is that Trudeau, who was such a defender of our Constitution and of the fact that a Canadian is Canadian is Canadian, now he's gone full fascist. And because of this narrative that COVID is such a pressing and serious concern that everything else has to be subordinated. And the government and our media, they are losing the room. Why are they losing the room? It's because of what's going on in Ottawa. Bravo to everyone who's gotten out and gotten down there. God bless you. I wish I could be there with you. I'll talk more about that later. There's a possibility. I'm giving serious consideration to going down myself. I want to see it firsthand. I feel like Woodstock is happening. It's 1969 and I'm missing it. But so probably, I'm guessing, tens of thousands of people have now descended on Ottawa. I think it's ebbing and flowing. I think it was probably tens of thousands over the weekend, and it's dropped down now. But I'm hearing that there's the potential for more trucks to be rolling in this coming weekend, of more people going down. My opinion, I encourage that because what's happening is people are seeing firsthand that they are being lied to. We're being told by our politicians and the media that the War Memorial, that the Terry Fox statue are being desecrated. It's a very loaded word. Desecrated conjures up images in people's minds that it's being vandalized, being spray painted or toppled, or just or people are pulling parts off of it. That's the impression you get when you hear a word like desecrated. Now, strictly speaking, I guess someone climbing up on the war memorial, that is, strictly speaking, that's a desecration. It's not respecting the memorial, it's desecrating it. But it's certainly not spray painting or vandalizing or doing it any permanent or even temporary harm. The people, from what I understand, the people in Ottawa, the vast majority, the 99.9%, upon seeing an individual climb up on the memorial, have shouted them down. Get up, get off. And likewise with the Terry Fox statue, the desecration, we heard about it. Apparently some people had put some Canadian flags on, and maybe the positioning of the flag had it upside down, which in the military is a signal of distress. I have an opinion on Canadian flags. I would like to see the protesters flying them right side up. I respect an individual's right to expression, though. If someone feels adamantly that they want to fly it upside down because they feel they know the meaning behind it, and they feel that we need to signal that we're in distress. But coming from a military perspective, I don't want to signal distress. I want to signal strength. I'd rather see Justin Trudeau fly his flag upside down and patriots flying theirs right side up. That's just my own opinion. So why is the narrative falling apart? Well, I want to talk. There are two basic camps. Myself, I'm in what I'll call the libertarian camp, not liberal, libertarian. And that basically means let the individual decide. If you think that this virus is the most pressing concern, you want to wear 15 masks and you want to get boosted up the wazoo, fill your boots. I'm not going to disparage you for your choice. But at the same time, if someone doesn't have that fear, that would be myself. I'm gathered with 800 people on December 7th in an auditorium in Whitby, an event hosted by the Democracy Fund. I've been to Henry Hildebrandt's church 5 or 6 times, meeting indoors, shaking hands, hugging, being happy. That's one side of the narrative. And then you have the other side. There are individuals who are genuinely terrified, who are all in on the news media, who believe that health officials, that they trust them to keep them safe, and they're going to do whatever. You can tell them to wear a grapefruit peel on their head because it has an acidic quality that will keep you healthy, and they do it. And then you have a large group in the middle who are kind of, how afraid do I have to be, right? There's lots of people around who have said, we're 2 years into this thing and I don't even know anyone who's gotten seriously ill. How afraid do I have to be? And then now all of a sudden on this past Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the weekend, right through to today, they're seeing all these people, thousands out in Ottawa. They saw the people on the overpasses lining the highways, hugging, laughing, singing, and they're seeing people having joy, and they're like, well, maybe I want to, maybe I'll go that way. And so don't let up. I have been advocating for months now. Get out. If you're not afraid, make your own decision. But if you're not afraid, don't be shy about sharing your experience. I haven't been. I will tell people, I was in Whitby week after I was in Whitby, 800 people. It was fantastic. I had a great time. I'm not afraid. If you are, I respect that. And I would ask that you simply respect that I'm not afraid. That's one reason why the narrative is falling apart. Another reason is people are turning on the news and they're seeing their favorite football team, basketball team, hockey team with a stadium or an arena packed with no one with a mask on, everyone having fun. They're going, well, why can't we have that here in Canada? They're seeing mandates ending in countries all over the world, Britain, Denmark, a number of others. They look down at the states, of course, and then we have Premier Moe of Saskatchewan, who has just announced that he is withdrawing all the mandates, and people in Ontario and other provinces. Well, is the science different in every other country and in Saskatchewan? And but here it's not. What, people are confused. They don't know which way to turn, so don't let up. Why not us? Why do we have to be last? We've got the highest rate in the world, or one of them. That was supposed to be the ticket back to normal. 70 to 80%, we were told back in the summer, 70, 80%. At that point, the virus stops with each person. So we can get back to normal. And the rest of the world is getting back to normal, but we're not. So come on, it's time for Canada. One thing I'm going to say is I wish people would leave politics out of it. And I know that's hard. I have political leanings. Everyone does. The only thing is politics is too polarizing. You have a figure like Maxime Bernier, for example. Maybe you like him, maybe you hate him, but there is a large segment of the population who does not like the man. And he's not a sitting politician. He has his party and he's trying to garner support, so he's attaching himself. He's getting out in Ottawa and everything. But a lot of people will say, "Well, I don't want to associate with that." The PPC has been branded by our lying media as a racist party, as and people believe the media. Sadly, they can choose what they believe in the media. And so they don't believe the COVID narrative anymore, but they still believe the narrative that the PPC is racist. So they, likewise, there was, I wish he wouldn't have done it, but Donald Trump was just down in the US. He did one of his rallies, and he attached himself to the convoy. So it paints this picture, that people have been told what to think about people like Donald J. Trump. And so they don't want to be associated with anything that he's attached to. And I hate this setup that we're in. There should be a discussion of ideas, not personality. I'll give you an example. Two characters, one Tucker Carlson, the other Anderson Cooper. If your political leanings are toward the right, you love Tucker Carlson. If you're left, you probably like Anderson Cooper. But conversely, if you hate the one on the other side, those on the left hate Tucker Carlson. Anything he says, they won't listen to it. And does Tucker Carlson say some good things? Yes. Does he say some bad things? Yes. Discuss what is being said and leave the personality out of it. But in today's world, you can't do that. Likewise with Anderson Cooper. He says some good things. He says some bad things. Well, unpack what he says and leave the person out of it. Leave the politics out of it. Wish we could, but we can't. And we've got a lying media in this country, and people are slowly waking up to that fact because, well, there was a media story that came out that the convoy, that their GoFundMe had been frozen. According to all the organizers and the individuals with access to those monies, that was a lie. Now, why would they lie? Why would they lie about freezing the account having been frozen? Because it would discourage people from donating. Oh, I read in Global, they said it was frozen. Oh, well, I guess I won't go on to the GoFundMe and give them that $10 I was going to give them or whatever. And so, our media lies. Talked in an earlier video about how they went to air with false allegations that if they'd done any investigative journalism, if they'd been ethical, they would have found out were false. They went to air with false allegations against the leader of Ontario's Progressive Conservative Party, Patrick Brown. He had been suing them for $10 million. I don't know the result of that lawsuit, But I imagine that my guess was when it started was that they'd probably settle and with an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, so that we never find out that they lied. They lie all the time. Historically, you can go back to the Gulf of Tonkin incident. You can go government and media lie. You can go back to the first Gulf War, not the second one, not the weapons, not the invisible weapons of mass destruction. There was one before that, around 1991, 1992, when George H.W. Bush was president. They lied to the world and said that Iraqi soldiers were throwing babies out of incubators. It is referred to as atrocity propaganda. And the goal was simple: to garner support among the American people and the global community to support a war of invasion based on a lie. Government lies, media lies, trust your own eyes, trust people you know and trust. If you know someone in Ottawa, get a firsthand who's down there, get a firsthand account from them. Ask them, are you seeing a bunch of white nationalists, radical, right-wing morons? I mean, you look at what happened down in Portland, Oregon during in the wake of the George Floyd murder, and the rioting and the violence, the vandalism that took place in that city and in numerous cities around the United States. That is not happening in Ottawa. This is not an Antifa type protest. Seems when Antifa gets involved that there's always major issues. I saw a video of shared by a friend of a bunch of people dancing around in a circle. Many of them appeared to be young mothers with children in those little, whatever you call them, little body carriers, for lack of a better term. And they had music. They were playing the song "We Are the World," and they were all singing it. And certainly not like Portland, Oregon was. So the last thing is, don't let up. We need a restoration of our Constitution, a restoration of our charter, a restoration of the rule of law. And I'm going to finish this off with a little civics lesson, because I know not everyone necessarily knows this, but how does a law become a law in Canada? Well, and I'm not going to claim that I am a constitutional lawyer and I know it perfectly, but I do know it in broad strokes. Firstly, the governing party, typically the governing party, will draft a piece of legislation. Then, once they've drafted it, they'll take it to the House of Commons, and it will have what they refer to as first reading. So they will read it out. And let's say they want to enact a law that requires everyone to be, well, that law will be read, and then there will be a debate. And once that debate is over, then it goes to committee. And they have parliamentary committees, and then stakeholders are invited to come and have their say. Who might be the stakeholders? Those asked to enforce such a regulation, though the medical community. What are the pluses, what are the minuses of this legislation? And then it's discussed in committee. Then it goes for a second reading. And once again, there's debate. And as I understand it, after second reading, then it comes to a vote. If the yeas are more than the nays, if there are more yeses than nos, then the legislation is passed. But by the House of Commons, and it's kicked over to the Senate, and the whole process starts all over again. First reading, Senate committee hearings, second reading, a vote, and if they ratify the legislation, then still not law, then it goes to the Governor General, the Queen's representative in Canada, the Crown. Then he or she has to sign it. That's called royal assent. It's basically a rubber stamp. I can't think of any instance where a Governor General in Canada has failed to give royal assent to a piece of legislation passed by the House of Commons and the Senate. So now it's law. However, there's still another step because the law has to stand up to constitutional scrutiny. If someone does not, someone can challenge the law on constitutional basis. Give you an example. We had a law in this country with respect to the very controversial topic of abortion. And I don't know exactly what the law said previously, but at any rate, it was challenged and it went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court struck the law down because they said it violated a woman's constitutional or charter right to security of the person. And so it was gone. And it's still gone to this day. That's the way our legal, our democratic system works in this country. But since the COVID era, now we have what are called orders in council. And an order in council, none of that takes place. It's just the prime minister or premier sitting around with their advisors, drafting legislation, and because of our, in my opinion, incredibly weak constitution, what's happened, I'll give you an example out in British Columbia. A number of the churches in, I believe it's the Fraser Valley, I forget how many churches, but a number of them put forward a constitutional challenge on the churches being forced to be closed. And they went to the, I don't know if it got to the provincial Supreme Court or at level it got to, but it was heard by a judge, and the judge admonished the British Health Ministry and Bonnie Henry and her department for the fact that they provided no substantiation for the measures. They said there's an emergency. The churches were saying, okay, substantiate that this is an emergency. And in essence, Bonnie Henry and her department's response